Hello and welcome, you're watching UATV News with me, Ksenia Buhai. Let's start with the latest developments. Ukraine and the United States have set the date for the meeting of the Strategic Partnership Commission. This was announced by Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba. According to him, the meeting will be held in Washington, D.C. Now, the work on the general updated Charter of Strategic Partnership, which will be signed at the meeting of this commission, is being completed.
It will be a serious, difficult visit. Representatives of different ministries and departments are going to participate in it. I will not be the only member of the government who will visit the United States in the framework of the meeting of the Strategic Partnership Commission, because we are aimed at the maximum result. We are working with our American colleagues upon this issue.
The security situation along the contact line was the main topic at the meeting of the Trilateral Contact Group on the peaceful settlement of the situation in Donbas. This was reported by the OSCE. The statement emphasized that the tension on the contact line is growing, namely the number of heavy equipment has increased. In addition, the mission faced unprecedented obstacles to its work. Illegal armed groups blocked the OSCE representatives in a hotel in uncontrolled Donetsk.
The unprecedented restrictions and harassment experienced by Special Monitoring Mission last week is unacceptable. This was part of our discussions, since these and other continuing impediments endanger the fulfillment of the mission's mandate.
Ukraine used a Bayraktar drone to reduce tensions on the contact line. This was stated by Serhiy Harmash, representative of Donetsk region in the Ukrainian delegation to the Trilateral Contact Group. According to him, this issue was the most acute for the Russian delegation. Kremlin's representative Boris Gryzlov participated in the meeting for only 5 minutes and then simply left it.
The Ukrainian defense minister was...
We confirmed that the Bayraktar was involved, since it allowed to suppress the enemy firing point with least losses and with surgical precision. Recently, the enemy has stepped up its actions, intensified the confrontation at the front. In order to reduce this tension, we really had to take measures to suppress the fire point.
Today, Ukraine marks the day of the expulsion of Nazi invaders. 77 years ago, on the 28th of October, Nazi occupants and their allies were finally expelled from the country. Over 3.5 million soldiers gave their lives in the course of liberation battles. In 2009, this day was set as a national commemoration by the special order signed by President Viktor Yushchenko. Today, current head of state Volodymyr Zelensky took part in a commemorating ceremony honoring the World War II warriors.
The years of Nazi occupation of Ukraine are a terrible, dark period in our history. Its consequences were more than 700 destroyed cities and towns, almost 30,000 Ukrainian villages. Hundreds of villages were burned with the inhabitants, thousands of destroyed hospitals and schools. The Holocaust, Babi Yar in Kyiv, Yanovska concentration camp in Lviv, Drobitsky Yar in Kharkiv, Bohdanivka in the Mykolaiv region, millions of victims. Millions of Ostarbiters, millions of crippled destinies, and these are the millions of reasons why we Ukrainians will always remember these soldiers who died in the terrible war, and why we bow our heads to our compatriots who, with their heroism, made an invaluable contribution to peace, became an example for a new generation of Ukrainian defenders who are defending Ukraine in the East.
113 decisions of the European Court of Human Rights are pending execution in Ukraine. Among the most common complaints are prison tortures, pressure on journalists and judicial bias. On average, Ukrainians who have won the cases have to wait for 7.5 years before execution of the court's decision. One of the biggest drawbacks is the lack of funds to pay compensation. Besides, it also goes about non-compliance of the Ukrainian judicial practices and legislation with European criteria. The number of decisions that were taken by the European Court in cases against Ukraine, it is a significant number. There are 1,680 of them. Since 2020, the Ministry of Justice has presented a national strategy, a solution to the problem of long-term non-compliance with court decisions, which oblige the public bodies, enterprises, institutions and organizations pay their debts to people, and a plan for the implementation of this strategy. This strategy identifies the causes of the problem, namely the legislative ones. The first Kyiv machine-building plant, the legendary Bolshevik, was sold for almost $55 million. The owner is Kyiv-based General Commerce Limited Liability Company. Such a large-scale auction was held for the first time since the sale of Kryvyi-Rih, Ukraine's largest integrated steel company. The new owner has to sign the contract within 10 days, obtain the permission of the Anti-Monopoly Committee within a month, and pay the full sum. Our correspondents know details.
1,429,017,000 hryvnias by participant number 1 and 3.
The auction, which lasted for about 10 minutes, was held in one round. The winner is the General Commerce Company. The starting price was 1,389,000,000 hryvnias. That is almost $53 million. During the auction, it went up to some 40 million hryvnias.
We have already conducted more than 3,000 fairs under the new rules and procedures, as a result of which the state budget of Ukraine was replenished with almost $190 million. The number of participants is increasing. This is a small, medium-sized privatization. The main goal is to transform non-working, unproductive, non-strategic assets into working ones.
After the collapse of the Soviet Union, the Bolshevik plant could not stand the competition. Only a couple out of the 24 buildings of the plant worked. Only 600 employees out of 6,000 remained to work there. This year, the rental of premises was almost the only income for the company. This profit did not even cover land taxes. The plant has accumulated more than 500 million hryvnias of debts.
Founded in 1882, now the Bolshevik plant is a half-ruined enterprise. Most of the plant's facilities do not work, the equipment is outdated. The main asset of the Bolshevik plant is an industrial site of 33 hectares in Shulyavka district in Kyiv. In addition, the assets of Bolshevik include a number of subsidiaries and recreation centers.
At present, the plant manufactures complex parts for mechanical engineering, for the production of large-sized tires. One of the products is rubber mixing chambers. It takes up to 6 months to produce them. Such cameras are ordered from abroad.
This is a rather complex product, and the cost of such a camera is about $160,000. It is used in the tire industry. It can also be used by rubber-producing factories. It is possible to get any rubber produced from it.
Under the terms of privatization, the new owner will have to pay off all the debts to the state, city and creditors, guarantee social protection to employees, invest in the modernization of the enterprise at least 57 million hryvnias or $2,100,000 over the 3 years, as well as preserve part of the production. Reported by Vadim Kramer and Svetlana Sich, UATV News.
The National Antidoping Center of Ukraine is accused of violating international testing standards. Investigations by the World Antidoping Agency Operation Hercules showed that starting 2012, Ukrainian athletes were informed in advance about the collection of doping samples, which is categorically unacceptable. In addition, this year, the center provided at least 6 samples taken from athletes during the competition period, but in fact, they were taken at a different time. This was done in order to help athletes meet the standard for the number of out-of-competition tests before the Tokyo Olympics. The leadership of the National Anti-Doping Center has resigned.
The National Anti-Doping Organization of Ukraine has violated the international testing standard. Therefore, the director of the Anti-Doping Center, Ivan Kurlyshchuk, and his deputy Yaroslav Kruchek have resigned. We state at the ministry that we take a clear position on the fight against doping and will not allow anyone to violate anti-doping rules.
Найближче засідання
The next meeting of the World Anti-Doping Agency's Executive Committee will take place in Paris on the 24th-25th November. Most likely, this is where the decision to start the process will be taken. If Ukraine is recognized as not complying with the requirements of the WADA anti-doping code, then this may lead to a massive ban on athletes from participating in international competitions.
Train stations, schools, employment centers, courts and the airport. The Minister of Community and Territorial Development, together with activists, have held checks for barrierlessness across 33,000 objects. As a result, only 10% of them turned to be fully open for people with disabilities. Over a third of buildings have met the test partially. This data was announced by the Minister of Communities and Territories Development, Oleksiy Chernyshov, at a meeting of the Council of Barrierlessness. According to him, the unsatisfactory result was quite expected.
This is quite a disappointing and natural result, leaving no surprise for us. This is something regions have to fix. In this regard, we share mutual understanding and a consistent level of communication. After conclusions are drawn, the Ministry of Regions will set the final evaluation of the regional governing bodies by the level of compliance with barrier-free standards.
Up next, the red zone in the capital of Ukraine. With such a request, the city head Vitaly Klitschko addresses the government. Such a decision can be made by a special commission for emergency situations. However, according to the measure, the level of infection in the city has already crossed a critical line. Furthermore, the city had stressed that quarantine restrictions in any case will be toughened since the 1st of November. As a reminder, lockdown measures include the complete shutdown of public spaces, entities and transport, with the only difference that this year's measure may be avoided by fully vaccinated individuals.
In the course of the last week, over 1,000 of residents of the city are getting tested positive daily, and over 30 deaths. And among the deceased, there are many young people, even a 1-year-old child. Of the total number of beds in the city of Kyiv, 63% are occupied, and in some cases, clinics are 100% occupied. 84% of those hospitalized require oxygen. For the third day in a row, ICU is occupied for more than 66%. This is already a red zone criteria.
A new anti-record in Ukraine. More than 26,000 new coronavirus cases were confirmed yesterday. Most of the infected are in the Dnipropetrovsk, Odessa and Zhytomyr regions. Ukraine remains the second in Europe in terms of daily mortality from COVID-19. The Ministry of Health is reporting almost 600 deaths over the past day. There are no plans to introduce strict quarantine in Ukraine. This was stated by Prime Minister of Ukraine Denis Shmyhal during a walking trip to Donetsk region. In Kramatorsk, the head of government visited the mass vaccination center at a bus station. Almost 100 people are vaccinated there every day. Shmyhal called on Ukrainians to get vaccinated. Residents of temporarily uncontrolled territories can come for vaccination without observing self-isolation.
There are vaccines in Ukraine. Another 13.5 million doses of Pfizer will arrive by the end of the year. All regions, all vaccination centers, vaccination points are supplied with vaccines. 95% of people in hospitals now are not vaccinated, so I urge all citizens of Ukraine to get vaccinated. This is the only way to stop the epidemic and pandemic.
Medical care during the stroke is one of the priorities, and the program of medical guarantees, according to the National Health Service of Ukraine. This disease is one of the main causes of deaths in Ukraine. Doctors stress that it is very important to get the necessary medical care in time during a stroke. The sooner it is provided, the more chances a patient has to fully restore health. In Ukraine, stroke treatment is absolutely free. 238 medical institutions throughout Ukraine are ready to provide the necessary round-the-clock assistance.
Медична допомога пацієнту з інсультом.
Medical care for a patient with a stroke is completely free of charge. We are talking about the following services: initial examination, urgent computed tomography, MRI, laboratory tests, blood tests, instrumental studies, electrocardiography, thrombolytic therapy, including essential medications, and the list as well. See the paintings with one's own hands at the Kharkiv Art Museum. An exhibition of tactile copies of famous paintings has opened there. Among them are the Zaporizhian Cossacks writing a letter to the Turkish Sultan by Ilya Repin, putting on arrest by Konstantin Trutowsky, as well as graphic works by Georgy Narbut. They created voluminous works of artificial stone. In the future, the number of exhibits of the kind is planned to be expanded, so the museum wants to make it accessible to everyone, including people with visual impairments. Our museum turns to be more and more inclusive and accessible mode. First of all, for the blind people, our project provides several new objects, namely paintings and graphic images in three-dimensional presentation. That's all for today. More updates on our official website, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter pages. Take care of yourself.